Welcome to If You Could See Me, Stories of Seeking and Solidarity. For anyone who doesn't know, I don't think there is anyone who doesn't know, my name is Erin Mahone, and I am the creator of this weird and wonderful thing. This evening, I am joined by some truly remarkable people, amazing storytellers. Amber Maiden, Sean Wellington, Tamara Cervenka, and Khadijah Washington are the dear and wonderful people who are here with us tonight. We are going to start this evening with some stories. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to have a conversation with the amazing Khadijah to Sean Washington, who is a therapist and an author. And we're going to come together and we're really going to talk about the world in which we live right now and the ways in which we're processing, the ways in which we seek and try to find solidarity and meaning to make meaning of our lives and of the world. Ultimately, that's where this project came from. Before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about some things that we have going on right now. I'm super excited and honored to be joining my friend and fellow author Amber Maiden at the end of this month for a brand new class at Life in 10 Minutes called Crossing the Color Lines. Amber and I are going to join together to have difficult conversations in a creative space. We are going to talk and process and write. Amber, do you want to talk a little bit about the class before we move on?
I will only get to my story, so I'll wait until after I tell my story.
Fantastic, beautiful, awesome. On Saturday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, because we do have some people in California, I will be interviewing Tara Colton, the founder of Talks with T, for Suicide Prevention, Suicide Awareness Month. She's an incredible speaker. For anybody who doesn't know, please check out the If You Could See Me podcast on the Mental Health News Radio Network. We are adding episodes all the time. The If You Could See Me project is dedicated to helping people learn to tell their stories in all the various and diverse ways in which we do that. We do this through storytelling and singing and live events, but there are lots of different ways in which people learn how to tell their stories in their authentic way. And so one of the things that the If You Could See Me project does is we teach and we do all of that through storytelling, but we also provide support and scholarships to individuals with a mental health diagnosis who are struggling to get their feet under themselves, who are young and don't have the financial means to, find their passion. And so if you are so inclined and you have the means at this very difficult moment, I request that you make a donation of any amount to the If You Could See Me project, www.ifyoucouldseeme.com. so that we can continue doing this very important work. Okay, now all the business is out of the way, and I am going to invite our very first storyteller to the stage. Amber Maiden is an attorney, a professor, a writer, a storyteller, and a light worker, and I am so honored that she is in my life and a part of this project. Please welcome Amber Maiden.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She gave me a lot of different titles, and to most of them, I'm like, whatever. But light worker, that's my favorite. And I'm going to tell you a story about light and why I think I'm a light worker. So this is a story about how I almost died. And you might think that it's going to be a sad story, but no, not at all. It's not a sad story at all. The world has gotten just absolutely crazy nuts this year. And so friends, we've all been trying to keep each other's spirits up. And I have two friends in particular, Nietzsche and Tamika. And I think Tamika's watching us right now, who send uplifting texts nonstop back and forth. So Tamika sent me a text like 2 days ago, or a meme that said, "Girl, you taking this incarnation thing a little too seriously." So I find that funny because in 2013, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had to fight that all year, but the story's not about breast cancer or me fighting that. It's about how when I was getting treatment for breast cancer, I had to have surgery that was so extensive. I got very ill and I almost died. Got a staph infection, and staph infection will kill you. And not only will it kill you, it is so incredibly painful, depending on how you get it. My mind thought, like, I was delirious with pain, and my mind processed this pain in such a way that it was telling me that I was pinned underneath a tractor trailer truck and that my limbs had been severed. Now, that wasn't even what was happening. I just had a staph infection. But that just goes to show you how painful it was, that my mind had to try and make sense of what was happening to my body. So all that was really happening was that I had this really bad staph infection as a result of this really complicated surgery. And the infection, the treatment for it required that I have multiple surgeries to like get rid of all this, I guess, staph. And so doctors kept turning my brain on and off, on and off, on and off. And so what happened was that my mind, my body, and my spirit got really separated out into distinct functions. So my body was like just an organic thing that needed to survive. It was like water, food, sleep. And it was doing what it needed to do to heal while I was getting all of this treatment. And my mind was really confused. Like I would like be out and then I'd come back and my mind would be trying to make sense of things and I just couldn't make sense of anything, couldn't make sense of time, couldn't make sense of all these questions these doctors were asking me. It just couldn't make sense of anything. But my spirit was having the time of its life. My spirit was having a ball because for whatever reason, during this time, my spirit could jump out of my body and go places. And my spirit was like bouncing and my spirit was going places and my spirit felt so free. And my spirit kept jumping in and out of my body and would come back into my body to see if my body was ready to be inhabited. And then it would be like, nope, okay, jumping out, going somewhere. And in my mind, I could see my spirit walking off. And when my spirit walked off, it would like just be light. Like it would like just light up everything, you know, that it was doing. It's strange. I can't really explain to you what this was or how this worked. I just can tell you what my experience was. So my spirit was having just all these amazing, it was talking to deceased relatives and even ones that I hadn't even met and just hanging out and jumping through time and doing all this stuff. So eventually I have to talk to this guy. And this guy is like, you know what? You've been doing all this stuff, but you got to make a decision. Are you going to go back to your life or what? And I was like, no, I don't want to go back to my life. And then she showed me, you know, this is all the stuff you've been doing. And there were all these pathways and some of them were so brightly lit. And she said, and that's your life. And I was alarmed by the life pathway because it was dark. It was darker than all those other paths. And it just had this darkness. It was like, just not bright like the other paths. And so I said, why would I want to go back there when it's dark? Look at these other paths. Look at all these options I have. Why would I want to do that? And she said, yeah, you know, I hear you, but you are carrying this light and it affects other people. And she like pulled up like a spider web, kind of is the only way I can describe it. It had all this light shooting off of it. And she said, this is all the people you're connected to and they're connected to your light. And if you don't go back, that light gets shuts out for them. And, you know, so that's the choice, you know, it's your choice. You can make the choice, but keep that in mind. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, really? Seriously? You guilt me back into going back to my life, you know, all this talk about other people. But I made the decision to come on back. So like I said, when she was showing me the dark path, I was alarmed because it really was a very stark difference between all the other paths and the life path and that darkness. I was like, what is that about? But then when I was going through my cancer treatment and just all the things that were happening during that time period, this is around 2013, 2014. So I remember seeing Philando Castile get shot live on Facebook. I remember seeing that. And I remember feeling my soul, my spirit just like jump out of my body and be like, nope, not dealing with this bullshit. Not dealing with it. But and so things have gotten darker. I feel like in the past 10 years on this planet, we've seen a lot of darkness come to the surface, things that we might not have ever thought that we were going to see in this life. Um, but what I take from my experience with almost dying and having that conversation is that we have to connect to the light inside of us. That is what's real. That is what's serious. That is what really and truly matters. And it's so easy to lose sight of that. And as we go through this healing process as a nation and a world, dealing with where we are, dealing with this point in time in history where we're having to decide, does life matter? Because, we're starting a conversation with Black Lives Matter, but really it's so much broader than that. We've been living in systems that have been telling us in so many different ways that life does not matter. So many different kinds of life does not matter. And that's really dark. And we're trying to outgrow that. We're trying to move beyond that. We're trying to heal out of that. And that's what, the conversations that Erin and I are going to be engaging in our class, Crossing the Color Lines. And it's a conversation that we definitely need to be brave enough to have. And it's not easy, but, that's what we're going to do. At the end of everything, what I take with me is that we all have this light. And if we can stay connected to that light, we'll be all right. That's what Tamika tells me every day. She's like, yeah, we're living through Armageddon, Amber, but we're going to be all right. And I'm like, what? We're going to be all right? And when I can connect to that light inside of me, I believe that. It's not easy though. Every day I don't believe that. But that's my story, guys. Hope it didn't run too long because I'm bad on the time thing.
Bravo! Woo! It's really funny. I am a firm believer that the universe brings people into our lives for a reason. In fact, I think I've had this conversation with most of the people that I know on this meeting right now. The truth is, Amber, that all day long, I have been walking around trying to be in the moment, trying to be present, but also every time, I live with the imposter, right? The imposter syndrome is my disorder among all, above all the other disorders that are very present. Imposter syndrome is number one. And so the voice in the back of my head, that voice of resistance, is so heavy and so dark and so horribly mean. Right, exactly, Sean. I see that in you, right? And I don't think that there's any creative person in the world who doesn't live with that in some capacity. But all day long, I have been thinking and reminding myself whenever I felt like I was going to go down that rabbit hole, because it usually happens right before a show, the day of a show, whether it's virtual or on a stage, I completely lose it. All day long, I have been imagining myself sitting with a beam of light shooting out of my chest, because that is the crux of all of it, is that if I can be a light, if we can be a light, then it doesn't matter if we're perfect. It doesn't matter if we fuck up, and sing the wrong words or say the wrong thing or have too many ums, or, it's all about, if I can just be a light, if I can bring the light into the room, then everything is going to be okay. So hell yeah, Tamika, for your wisdom and your brightness, because that's what it's all about. Let's just bring the light as much as possible. And so now I just walk around, I'm going to walk into every room like this, and people are going to think I'm showing off the girls, which, there's plenty there to show off, but I'm really just shooting the light out of my chest. And the one who has to be reminded of that most of all is me. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. Our next storyteller is a new friend of mine that I am so excited to have met recently. Sean Wellington is a storyteller, a speaker, a teacher, a mental health advocate, and many, many other things. And I am so excited to have him join us tonight. Sean, take it away.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Amber. That was beautiful.
Thank you, Sean.
So, yeah, my pleasure. It's really nice to be here. So it is December 2018. It's a Friday morning, and I'm driving to my therapist's, which I do every Friday morning, and I'm waiting at this red light. And this red light is taking too long to turn green. Now, there's nothing wrong with the light. My left hand and my left foot start to tap. And they tap faster and faster. I've got some sweat that's slowly building on my temples, and my heart, it's going faster. My right hand is clutching the gear shift, and I know what I'm about to do. And I'm trying not to do it because it's dangerous and it's stupid, but I gun it. I gun it. I go right through the red light. And I know when I get to my therapist's, we are going to have a conversation. We need to change meds. Or maybe we need to engage differently with one another. Maybe I need to see another therapist. I don't know, but I hear the sirens behind me. I see the red and blue lights. And I pull over, and I am trying to calm down. And the officer asks me for my license. And I say, officer, I want to give you my license, but here's the thing. I've got only half of it. You can see it. I've got the half. It's got my face, and you could see the date of birth, but the other half, maybe it's in the glove compartment. Maybe it's under my seat. Maybe it's at home. I don't know. No, I don't tell this to him. I just give him the half a license and hope that that's okay. And he goes back to his car, and he comes back, and he tells me that I was going twice the speed limit, that he could take me to jail. I say, look, my therapist is right there. And it was right there. I mean, I was right at my therapist's office when he pulled me over. He ends up writing me 2 tickets. He issues me this warning. He says, you need to slow down. So when I get to my therapist, I'm pacing, and he says, I think you need to go to the UNC psych unit, the University of North Carolina psych unit. And I'm pacing around his little office. I said, the psych unit? I don't need to go to a psych unit. I said, all I need to do is to take a walk in the woods with a friend. That's all I need, and I mean it. And this wise-ass therapist of mine asked me if I have any friends around. Well, he knows the answer. I mean, I've been seeing him for several months. He also knows I have been getting less and less sleep and more angry. And it is, in truth, getting dangerous. And it can't last much longer. And now he's telling me to go to the psych unit. But it's not where I need to be. I tell him, I said, you're wrong. I don't need to be locked up. And then I ask him, are you suggesting I go to the psych center, or are you telling me to go there? And he tells me I have an hour to get myself there. I don't ask him what happens if I don't go. See, the psych unit, at least this one, they only admit people who are suicidal or homicidal. And I'm neither. I don't want to die. And that's exactly what I tell the woman when I get there, the woman who's at the front of the lobby, who's checking people in. She says, why are you here? I said, my doctor told me to come here. She says, are you suicidal or homicidal? I said, I am neither. She goes, well, we can only take you if you're those. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? My doctor told me to come here. I'm existing in this space between. I said, I don't want to die. I just don't want to keep living. Not like this. She starts filling out the paperwork. And I'm waiting. And now I'm pacing in this lobby. And I'm wondering, maybe it is the right place for me. And so they escort me to this little room. And in the room are 2 smaller rooms. And they sit me down, and this nurse comes in, and she gives me a bag. And she says, let me have your bag. And I'm thinking, I don't want to trade bags with you. I want my bag. Why would you want to take my bag? But she doesn't give me a choice. She takes my bag, and she gives me this bag. And in the bag is this outfit I need to wear. It's this old blue gown and these aqua blue socks with like white rubber on the bottom. And I put them on. And I'm ready to go. And I want to go outside and let everybody know I am ready for the next step in this process. Take me to where I need to be. And I open the door to the little room, and then there's the other door to the large room, and I open it up, and I'm ready to say, hey, but it's locked. They've locked me in. And I'm all alone. And now I start banging and I'm pacing and I'm like a caged animal, fast, like that. And it was probably 20 minutes, but it felt like a couple of hours. And finally, a nurse comes back, but she's not alone. She's with a police officer. The police officer, he has a gun. And they escort me. And I say, where are we going? And the nurse says, we're going to the emergency room. I said, I thought the emergency room, like, I thought the psych unit wasn't an emergency room. I don't understand that you can have an emergency room for a psych unit. But they take me there and they put me in on this bed. And next to the bed's a little desk. And then there's this like mustard colored curtain. And I'm not allowed to leave my space. There's nowhere for me to walk. I can't even pace. And the only people who talk to me are telling me what to do and what not to do. And so I go outside and I get someone who appears to be a nurse. And I say, I think there's been some kind of mistake here. I'm just trying to get, I don't think this is the right place for me. And he says, you need to go back to your room. And I said, no, you don't understand. I think there's a mistake. He goes, no, I don't think you understand. If you think this is bad, I'll send your ass to the basement. Now get your ass back to the room. And then the next day, a doctor finally comes to see me and he says, how are you doing? How are you feeling, Sean? And I say, doctor, how am I feeling? Let me ask you a question. How would you be feeling if for 2 days you were treated not as someone in pain, but as like a deadly animal that needs to be put down, doctor? How would you feel? By the third day, when 2 orderlies take me upstairs to the actual psych unit, I'm on the 5th floor, and I'm in the actual psych unit, I feel like a deadly animal that needs to be put down. And they sit me at this table and they walk away. And there is this middle-aged male nurse. He tells me, I need to come with him. He says to me, you need to come with him. I said, what? I said, what? Why don't you go fuck yourself? And I am ready. I am ready for this guy to push back just as hard. Harder. Bring it. And he smiles. Soft, sweet, and safe. A safe smile. He asked me if I want anything. And it's been less than 3 days, and this question, the idea of it, I can't even, like, I don't even know what to do with it. Yeah, I said, yeah, I'd like a coffee. Cream, no sugar. I've got that on rote memory. I've said it thousands of times. I'm wondering if I've asked too much. But he brings it to me. And he sits with me. We're on the 5th floor of the UNC psych unit, this table. And I end up staying for a week. And I don't know if it was the right place, if it's what I needed. But there are a few moments with this middle-aged male nurse that I get exactly what I need. Because with him, it feels like I am truly walking in the woods with a friend. Thank you.
Boom!
Boom! That's right. That
You
happens.
say that in my little group.
On Sean's shows.
Wow. I don't know if that's a fit for this group, but that's what I got for you, at least this time.
I think it's a perfect fit, Sean. As someone whose spirit had to jump out of her body in the hospital, I will co-sign that hospitals, even if it's not a psych ward, will drive you crazy.
Yeah.
They will drive you crazy.
I don't know if that guy ever knew what he did for me. I didn't tell him. I was just, but.
Thank God for nurses. That's what I said through my experience.
Some of them.
I had a lot of good nurses, so
good.
My experiences were positive. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what comes up for me, Sean, is first of all, a magnificent story. Thank you. Beautiful story. As a story, beautiful, but you know that. You do. You're a good storyteller. You know that.
Amazing.
What is even more present for me in this is that we operate within a system that reduces people's humanity to such a level that basic human decency is considered a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
And that is why this project exists. Because of the fact that no one should ever feel that much gratitude for basic human
So,
needs,
right.
right?
Yeah.
There should never be a moment in any of our lives, especially in the midst of a mental health crisis, or a medical crisis, when you have separated from, the existence that you're used to, when you are vulnerable, when you are not in control of your own environment, and you are reduced to being entirely dependent on a system to care for you.
Yeah, you nailed it. You're right.
Right. And it should go without saying that a human being in that situation should walk in and be able to expect a
You would
safe
think,
smile.
yeah, like you would think the occasional exception is the jerk. The norm would be, but it's not that. And for, reasons that there's many of them.
Right.
But yeah.
But the reason that this exists, for all of everyone that's watching and that's here with us, those of you who are a part of this project on a regular basis, those of you who've never joined us before, what's true is that had Sean not told that story, and had Sean told another story, it is very possible that we could have all gone through the rest of our entire lives thinking that Sean had never had an experience like that. Right? That it only happens to other people. Yeah. Right? And what we're doing here, and that's why it was the perfect story for you to tell, Sean, is that everyone has some story this, and we all deserve to be able to tell it safely, and to fucking hell never have to sit in a space and be treated like an animal. Even if you're acting like one, you shouldn't be treated like one. Sorry.
No, you're preaching to the choir. I'm caught a little bit sometimes because what do I say? You share that story. I don't want to tell people or encourage anybody, if they are listening and my words have any weight, to not go to the hospital. I don't want to say that, but at the same time, I got to tell you, that was a really shitty experience. Right. And that's one of the better hospitals in the state. So, university, it's big university down here. I mean, you're not that far from me. So UNC, hey.
Well, I mean, but it's true. And it's also, the only way change happens is by bringing that stuff into the light, by saying,
shine a light on it.
This is right. This happens, and it won't continue to be allowed to happen if we don't pretend like other people have these issues. Right. Right. Sure. And it's just somebody's crazy whatever, or the guy on the street, or it's the abuse doesn't happen in the light. It doesn't. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Okay. See, I didn't think we would actually have this much talking, but I'm cool with it. It's awesome. Fantastic. I have a big mouth. Okay. Our final storyteller of this section of the evening is a magnificent artist, storyteller, writer, seeker, and most of all, survivor. Everyone, please welcome Tamara Cervenka.
Thank you. I'm just going to lunge right into it. For 3 years, I dreamt of Dry Lagoon, and now I sit in that place, surrounded by the whooshing and crashing of the waves. The fog here is in motion and looks like smoke moving across the horizon. Sometimes it feels like the world is engulfed in a passing cloud. I sit on a massive downed tree trunk and contemplate roots. I contemplate the lack of my own. A tree with no roots falls over. Is this why I keep falling? Is it possible to grow roots when you constantly uproot yourself in search of richer soil? Face always seeking sunshine, so much so that it repeatedly drags you away from where you are planted. For 3 hard years, I've had the mantra, 1 foot in front of the other. How do I get through this? 1 foot in front of the other. Should I open that door? 1 foot in front of the other. What will happen when all this is over? Where will I go? What will I do? One foot in front of the other. I am reborn nearly every day, constantly evolving, moving, learning, pushing. The pain of a skin too tight is unbearable, but all too familiar. Like a snake, I am constantly shedding old skin, leaving the dull, empty husk behind in favor of the jewel-like shine of my new form, one that fairly quickly will lose its appeal again. I am stuck in a forever repeating cycle. The pain, followed by relief and gratitude, followed by discomfort and fatigue, followed by that eureka moment, the sweet relief of realization. When you can give a feeling a name, you can finally have power over it. You can shed the skin of confusion, being lost and then found just to get lost again. I travel from place to place like a cutting of a plant in a small bottle, fledgling roots growing, ready for the right soil. Just this year, I have packed my car and moved my whole life 3 times. Last week, I passed through the layers of smoke from all the wildfires and coughed my way north. I get to visit the lives others have built, and I admire their roots. Am I like this downed tree I sit on? Or am I more like the rocks tumbling in the surf over an endless expanse of time? Am I like the agate, my milky and rough layers slowly chipping away to reveal the glow beneath? We are shaped by violence. My life is filled with passing moments. A cormorant perched atop a branch in the center of calm water, its black wings outstretched in the sunlight as if in worship. A hummingbird dipping below the surface of a small creek, buzzing and bathing. A black vulture and a white heron rest on gnarled branches of a dead eucalyptus tree. A dove joins them. A rock with the word smile painted on it perfectly placed for some stranger to find. Will I ever find my nest?
You paint pictures with words. Whenever you tell me a story, I feel your heart, I feel the power behind your words, but I feel like I'm sitting next to you in that space, just soaking up the incredible environment. Just every time, every story you've ever shared with me has been that. Please keep doing that.
Thank you.
I think a lot of people can relate to the 1 foot in front of the other. Like, I got to say that to myself every day, these days. 1 foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I think we're all seeking, and it's everyone's mantra. And the theme was seeking and solidarity. And, you know, I feel like as alienating as we believe our stories are, they are a lot more common than we may think. And all it really takes is just sharing to realize just how relatable all of our experiences are, regardless of where we come from or where we're going.
Yep. This year, my mantra has been, I'm taking every day 10 minutes at a time. And that's the only way, right? I mean, I don't know. This has been the weirdest fucking year of my life. And I've had a lot of years, and there have been a lot of weird ones. Like a lot of weird, like I've passed out in numerous places. I got run over by a car and broke my pelvis in 5 places. I've had 3 children, and I've been married for almost 20 years. And this is by far the weirdest year I've ever had in my entire life.
Weird.
Because, you know, last week I did an event with Sean, and we were talking about, you know, short stories, very short stories, sort of impromptu short stories. And I talked about my nickname. My nickname is Shark Woman, because I never stop moving or I'll die. Well, it's really interesting because what this year has taught me is that I don't want to be Shark Woman anymore. I don't want to be that person who can't sit still long enough to let her roots grow underneath her. I realize that that there are only so many hours in the day, and I want to spend my time on the things that are most important to me, not for the purpose of hustling for my worthiness, as the great Brene Brown says, and I hate her because she has all the best lines that I wish I had written.
Probably has a team creating this line. Just for what it's worth. I mean, she probably.
Thank you for that, Sean. I appreciate that. That's very nice of you.
I mean, it's true. I mean,
but
28 people working for it.
the reality is that, you know, very much the seeking and the solidarity came to me as of, you know, a reminder that seeking solidarity is the great equalizer. It is the thing that all humans do. We all do it differently. And oftentimes the way one person seeks is deeply disturbing to the way to another person, but regardless, everyone's looking for meaning. Everyone's trying to figure out what the hell they're here for and what it all means. And so understanding that we all have those different experiences, and yet here we are all together sharing them in one space. I so appreciate the three of you starting our show off. Such a sort of broad offering, different stories, different people, different experiences, and I just adore you all.
You're muted. There you go.
We're gonna take.
There I am. I got an alert right when you said that, and when I went to click unmute, it took me to Gmail for a second. So not as important this. I'm doing really well. I'm enjoying being here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for inviting me to tell a story. I didn't have one prepared, but yeah, it's exactly what I needed to do this week, was work on stories. So thank you so much. And it's like that drive to come up with one story has spurned like 3 or 4 stories. And Sean, let me just say thank you so much. I have a story that I've like written and buried time and time again that's very similar to yours.
Oh, yeah?
And it's traumatizing and horrifying, and I just don't like to look at it sometimes, you know, but thank you for sharing that. That was
man. I'm happy to do it, and it did take me a little time. That was December 2018, so had it been January, maybe maybe no, but with a little distance.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, if I think back to that stay in the hospital, just because you reminded me of something, and given that like you have a few stories, yeah, there might be 10 stories there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not the only one. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happened, and I have a lot of ideas, thoughts about it, feelings about it, and yeah, but they're hard. They're challenging stories to write. You know, they're not like, hey, this crazy thing happened at the bowling alley stories.
Right. Yeah.
They're a little different, and I think they often take more something. I don't know what the word is, but yeah.
I think
bravery, I think, is what they take.
Well, and energy. I mean, actual energy. There is an amount of energy that is required to stand up and tell a story of any kind. But when you're telling stories like this, there's even more of like an energetic force that you need to like propel you into it, and it also takes more of a physical and emotional toll on you when you're done. Yeah. So, you know, you have to be in the right space. That's why I always honor anyone who joins us to do this, because it requires a lot of emotional, you know, momentum. And I, you know, when I do like the big shows, we were supposed to have, you know, 7 of them this year, and we had 1.
Breathe.
Right. A year. it takes me a long time to recover
Yeah.
from that process, because, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot of vulnerability. Okay. And we're back. There's no dimming of lights. There's no hurry to your seats. There is merely me raising my hands and saying, it's time, it's time. So thank you all for sticking around. We have some wonderful, oh, your sister, Tamara, your sister is on Facebook Live. Hi,
Oh,
sister.
that's nice.
She's
I had to turn everything off to preserve my bandwidth, so I don't know anything. I've turned my phone off. I've shut everything down. I sent out a text message and I turned my phone off. Like,
good for you. That's amazing.
Anna, I love you. You're the best.
Oh, it's fantastic. We've got lots of people commenting, and so thank you all to everyone who is joining us. You see me looking back and forth. I have two laptops here. I have one on which I am watching our Facebook Live, and this one is the one that I'm doing Zoom on, and I'm running music and sound through my phone and a Bluetooth speaker over there, and I am one person with many brains. So thank you for your patience. All right, so here we are moving into our next phase. So recently I met a kindred. I meet many kindreds, but this particular kindred is like, we are of the same something. The same stardust came down and created the two of us. Khadijah Washington is a therapist, a social worker, a mom, a community leader, a incredible author who recently wrote this amazing book called Real: Radical Empathic Acceptance of Life, How to Live and Serve Abundantly. I loved this book. I loved talking to Khadijah on the podcast, and I'm super excited to have her here to read and to talk, and hooray. So everybody welcome Khadijah.
Welcome.
Happy to be here. So, oh my gosh, I was like, wow, my stories are going to be as good as those. But I'm so happy to be here, and that you guys are giving space like this for everyone to share, because I know it definitely changes hearts and minds, and exactly what people need right now. So it was like excellent timing. Got the message. I was like, couldn't be better. What else am I doing but staying in the house? So I wasn't busy at all.
You know, that's true right now. It's like, really? There should be like 4,000 people here, because what else are people doing on a Thursday night?
Yeah, it's not even that much going on for real. So I'm Khadijah. I am a therapist here in Richmond, Virginia. I wrote this book, Real, because I was always answering kind of like the same questions. You know, like I've been a therapist for like about 15 years. And the reason why I became a therapist is simply because I needed therapy, and my family needed therapy significantly. Came from a very traumatizing, chaotic childhood. I grew up in Harlem, New York in the 80s, and everything that could happen happened. I always knew that what a social worker was, because social workers were always in my home. And my siblings and nieces and nephews were involved in child welfare, from foster care to group homes to psychiatric facilities, to coming out of psychiatric facilities, to going to Rikers, to coming out of Rikers, to going, you know, getting back into trouble, that kind of thing. So I'm the youngest of 7 siblings to a single mom. And I think that was a lot of the motivation. I grew up watching Cheers, and I wanted to be like Frasier Crane, and talk to people on a sofa. And I thought that was totally possible, even though I was a little Black girl from Harlem. I was like, he has a really good accent, and I think I could do it. I'm terrible at accents, however. So I was like, well, let's just put it all in a book. So when people ask me what is Real about, it's really like my life, and then like what I've learned from my clients, the families, and my family, all wrapped up into one, like how to accept basically our imperfections and the things that we struggle with, and be okay with it, and still see the like unconditional empathy that we can all like walk in for ourselves and for other people. And I think if people just did that more, they would have a lot easier. So I'm not to say it's going to be easy. Life isn't easy, but it would be a lot easier if we could accept that empathy for ourselves first and be able to practice it on other people. So when I dropped this book, fortunately or unfortunately, this was right at the height of a pandemic, a racial pandemic, riots and killings. So I was not intentional about it being about race or any particular thing. It was just race was such a part of the culture and racism and systemic issues that brought upon the trauma in my family and generations of trauma. And I consider myself a generational trauma breaker. So it was kind of people really connected with the fact that I coming from a very Black community, Black neighborhood, walking into white spaces for the first time as a child, going to camp, living with a white family, and experiencing that for the first time and realizing for the first time that there was a such thing called race, or even people live separately, or there weren't people who were going to be like me in places that had white people. So that's kind of like my first experience, and then pulling that apart to realize it wasn't just people living separately, but actually having separate lives and lifestyles based off of the color of your skin or your family or wealth and the things that separate us. So I could not decide which to read from, so I decided to just start a short reading from like basically me going to camp for the first time and meeting the family. I went to a camp called Fresh Air Fun in New York, still going on, still happens every single summer, where a child from the city goes up to usually Rochester, New York, or the country, stays with the family for 2 weeks or a month, and basically lives there, and all types of good things ensue. So this is like my first, it's like, I don't think this is chapter 4. So it's like called The Path You Chose and the Path That's Chosen. So it says, I love summers with the Scannels. They would always ask me about what I was reading, and I liked that. I was able to order anything I wanted. They made sure all the children read books every day. I mostly read Judy Blume, and the Scannels were always attentive and complimenting me about my reading and comprehension. My mother never asked me to read, but she did give us money for good grades. Like Dr. Fraser Crane, I was observant and noticed how differently we lived. The first place the Scannels and I visited together was the supermarket for some treats. I arrived and walked through the aisles and yelled out, "Where are all the Black people?" And I don't recall an answer, just an uncomfortable look on their faces. It had not occurred to me that there were places that Black people didn't live. Experiencing the white world, I was somewhat shocked that no one seemed to notice that Black people were missing. I was less shocked to notice that Black people in Harlem never mentioned the lack of white people. One day, the mom, Nancy, tried to explain to me why I didn't need to refer to them as my white family. I said, when she said, when we look at you, we don't see color. I didn't understand that because I saw myself as Black, and being with them, I was never able to unsee it. Our lives seemed different, so different that color became the way I could define the differences. They lived in a big house with a couple of dogs, lots of cats, rabbits, and a horse named Winston. I never knew a horse could be a pet. Nancy stayed at home and tended to the house and children. Everything was white. So that was pretty much my first experience. And I mean, it kind of goes into the differences in my family, and just what I think I talk about a lot is it wasn't that my mother or father were like, hey, I want to not do this. It was just their legacy of how they were raised, how they came into the world, the stressors, and all of the mental everything pressures that came into kind of coming from a family where it wasn't about being successful. It was about learning how to survive. And when you're raising your children in survival, you're not asking questions like, what do you like to read? And what's your favorite food? You're really asking questions like, try to stay alive, try to survive, try to get something for us or take care of someone. And it was just such a different life that it became to define like what kind of family, what kind of life I was going to have. Of course, that didn't make necessarily all the right changes, or I still make mistakes growing up, but it really was the foundation of realizing that there could be some differences and it didn't have to be a certain way.
Erin.
Somebody called you?
Did somebody just say something?
Someone did, but I
Oh,
didn't know
okay.
what it was.
Sorry, that was my speaker speaking. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
AI.
Shocked me out of my attentiveness. When you were in that environment and you were happy and enjoying yourself and you felt really good about where you were, and how do you reconcile that with, any kind of, I hate to say the word guilt, but guilt, or, wanting to be in a different place, or wanting to, let go of where you come from? How do you reconcile those two things?
I think if I'm honest with myself, I don't know of a lot of Black people who grew up in the urban community that didn't aspire to be like the Brady Bunch. Like if I hadn't met the Scannells, then I would always look at the Brady Bunch or I Love Lucy and think this is white people and they're happy all the time. Because when you don't have exposure to something, all you have is the media to really shape your thoughts and impressions. And I would even be like, man, I mean, we got 7 kids here, technically 9 people living in the house. They had 6 kids and they had a huge house. So I was always going to look like this is probably a better deal. But I don't think consciously I was going, well, white people have that and white people didn't have it. It was just, that's just the way that it became, until I, went to college and realized there were, especially if you go to a historically Black college, you're going to be exposed to more middle-class Black people who have more. And it's a thing that you don't always get the exposure to when you're living in a community that is, economically deprived.
Right. A lot of what you talk about in your book and in your work when you're out in the community is about the process of becoming financially independent, financially secure. And I think that, that is a thing that, that we all do, but it feels like that's very wrapped up in the concept of seeking, in the concept of like, what do I want my life to look like? How do I want to, to be present in the world? And so I'm just curious how you envision that when you talk about, the work that you did, the focus, the intention, the presence that you had to, be able to lift yourself up in that way and move forward.
I think the biggest thing, financial piece is huge because it is a generational trauma. Like I think money can be a trauma. And I talk about that. Like money makes people, the lack of it anyway, makes people do things that they would normally have to do. And that's one thing that people don't want to reconcile, is that people are not out here doing crimes because they're just terrible people. They're doing it, again, because you grow up in a family of survival. And if I have to take from you to live to the next day, so be it. And what I've even had to reconcile in my head was telling myself and changing that for myself, that like I would work 2 or 3 jobs and never look at my paycheck, because in my mind, I just never had money. Even when I got licensed and I was making more money, I would still not want to touch or handle my money, because I would be like, I don't want to mess it up. I'm never going to have enough. And those kinds of mindsets, people who are, even living in poverty, you live on this is all I need because I know how to triple it. I know how to make more from nothing. And then to a certain degree, it's like, oh, that's incredibly creative. And then another way, that's just can become limiting in a sense, because it's like, you can make more money. It's really not, it's really just a tool. Like, it really is just money.
Right.
But when it becomes the whole focus of who gets to be good, who gets to be bad, white people have it or black people don't, and if I have it, am I not black anymore? If I'm successful, if I make a certain amount, I mean, even now in the black community, I feel like there's always a upper black, middle black, and poor black, but it's never like, and it's always like that chaining of things. And then if you have too much, are you selling out? And what did you have to do to get it? So I think that's always been a thing that I encourage people to really look at, to really value their time, not so much the money, because I had terrible social work jobs. I mean, I talk about my first job in this book, making $12.50 an hour. And I had a master's degree in social work, and nobody ever told me, well, maybe you should get a different type of job. Like, no one ever talked to me about money. How much should you be making? How much do you need to survive? And I just have honest conversations, because I'm mentoring social work students now. And I'm like, yeah, you got to really think about your debt. Think about how much you're going to owe. Think about if you want to have a family, kids. We don't need to be shying away from those kind of conversations, because if I would have known that the first year out, instead of having to work myself through all of those jobs for 10 years to make a decent living, I would have been probably a lot further along. But it can definitely, the obsession over money can become oppressive. And then like the I'm okay poor can also become like oppressive at the same time. So it's like having that, just like food, having that good relationship with, it's just a tool, it's a choice. What are you comfortable with?
What you just said about, becoming, obviously I'm not a Black person, so I don't have that part of my identity, but it's very interesting that you would say, when you become a person who happens to be a Black person who, has money, you have to then defend yourself in a way that creates some kind of cognitive dissonance, that it feels almost wrong to have done well. And that is a really difficult, painful set of circumstances to kind of try to reconcile. I've worked really hard, I've done what I have to do, and also now I have to defend myself because it's not, it's looked upon as if I'm, getting too big for my britches or whatever.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I know people who they've done really well, and they come from a family like mine, and it's weird to say, it's almost as if doing well or being successful makes you the black sheep of the family, and a family like mine.
Right.
Which is strange to say, like, you don't have any charges, you're legally, free, you own a home, but because, again, it's that mindset, like that poverty mindset that bonds people. It's like you're bonded to, I'm struggling. And even in the music, like, I have an 18-year-old son, so I'm hearing, god awful music all the time. But there's a lesson in the music, because they're the same theme, right? The thing that bonds the music is I'm struggling in alcohol, drugs, women, sex, finances. I gotta get money, get rich or die trying. It's all the same theme. So if you think about it, like, it is sort of anti-culture to say, maybe this isn't a big a deal just to say I want to be comfortable, and maybe I don't have to look like I'm rich, and maybe I don't have to look a certain way, but maybe this is it for me. But it does cause some people, even when I'm like, I told someone I don't believe in car notes, and they were like, why wouldn't you buy a car? You can afford one. I don't believe in it. It's just an idea. Like, money's just an idea. Right. So it's like, if you just say I don't want to do it, then, but people are so tied into, this has to be a thing for you. I have to show other people that I can afford this, or I have to do something for other people. And I'm like, I don't loan money. If I have it to give, I give. If I don't, just I've never, like I said, like I'll never know it when I give a gift. Like I'm always like, oh, I gave them a gift. But when I loan money, I'll be like, they still owe me that money. I don't remember what I gave them 2 years ago, but I remember the money you owe me back.
Right.
I never got. So why would I want to put myself through that again? So just getting out of that like whole money trauma thing. Like I'm
Sure.
not going to traumatize myself with it.
So I want to open it up to anybody who wants to contribute to the conversation, you know, and ask everybody here, you know, when you think about, you know, taking it back to the theme, when you think about seeking, when you think about, you know, the search for meaning, the search for the, you know, the idea of who you're supposed to be, how much of where you are is based in shoulds or other people's expectations, and how much of it is, you know, based in having made decisions that, you know, very consciously and intentionally brought you to where you are. Yeah, Tamara.
Well, there's a lot of decisions that I make, but a lot of them are based on my circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not a person of color. I'm not Black, but I am an immigrant, and it doesn't show on my skin. It doesn't show in the way I speak. But, you know, coming from that background, you kind of start in the back of that, like, you know, if there's like a marathon, you're in the back. So like, I relate to that sentiment. I really do. And in some ways, some people get to catch up somehow. I don't know what their magic is. But, I never caught up. So, and I think a part of that also comes along with being sort of an unconventional person, and a person who seeks experience, and a person, the kind of person who, you know, like my mom told me not to touch the iron when I was little. So I stuck my entire palm on it, because I don't learn from people telling me things. I learn from doing them myself. So even that itself kind of sets you back somewhat, you know? And sometimes you wish that you were more conventional, and that you were more of a person that's practical, that you're more of someone who could like read a manual and get with the program. And, you know, I don't know that even if I was to come into a large amount of money somehow miraculously in my life, that I would ever escape the mentality of living from moment to moment, from day to day, from paycheck to paycheck. And it's something that I deeply relate to, even though oftentimes I don't present myself as someone who comes from that background. I'm really good at thrift shopping, so I look real good all the time. And I make things. I know I have a lot of friends who are makers, very creative, wonderful people. And that's all I have to say, is that like the mentality never goes away, you know? And I really want to check out your book, Khadijah, because you touched on so many things. It's almost like you're always chasing, and no one ever had that conversation with you, you know? Like in high school, I didn't know that, you know, like I thought college wasn't for me because I was poor, because I lived in a neighborhood that was only inhabited by Black people, immigrants. There was nobody to tell me that my interest in psychology didn't limit me to becoming a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a counselor, all of which I didn't think that I, you know, like I just needed guidance, and there was nobody there because there was nobody in my life who had that experience, and my parents were just surviving, and we're all stuck in survival mode, and the survival mode and a paycheck to paycheck, it's a mentality that doesn't quite really go away, and it's still with me in this moment right now today.
Right.
I mean, I am on a goat farm in Humboldt County, third place I've lived this year, because I am just trying to find something that is stable. I'm trying to find a nest. I'm trying to find a way to make this life for myself, but sometimes it's so hard to do it yourself when that network, when that whole background, like literally your entire history, your family is not there, no matter how much they want to. I have a wonderful sister and a wonderful mom who will die for me, I feel.
Right.
Yet you still feel like you're always just trying to catch up.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read your book, and I look forward to reading it, Khadijah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. You know, it's really interesting because this talking about money, one, it wasn't really necessarily the thing that I was like, yeah, man, let's get together and talk about mental health and money tonight. Like, this is the thing, right?
Right.
But there is so much tied up in this topic about identity, about, you know, where you belong, about whose expectations have you lived up to? Did you, you know, are you an artist who is comfortable, you know, being less than, you know, wealthy, which is, you know, certainly a thing, and many of us are, and that is the way that it is. And, you know, the shame and the indignity that comes along with, you know, being a person who doesn't fall into the, you know, suburban middle class, you know, expectation, house, car, kids, you know, the whole 9 yards. And I always, you know, I have kids in a car. You know, but I rent my house, and I feel like, you know, there's so much shame that that is tied into a lot of these issues that, you know, because we don't talk about it. It's another thing. It's you know, it's because it's the thing you don't talk about. It's the, you know, the thing that happens again in the shadows. And so much of us seeking solidarity is in trying to feel like we fit in somewhere. And so often we're not telling the whole story of ourselves, because those are the things we don't talk about. So that's why we all feel like we haven't found our people, or we haven't found the place where we fit in. You know, it's not that one person has it better figured out than another person. It's that there's about 100 million different ways to live your life. And if you're not happy with an aspect of it, it's okay to do something different to change it. And if your life looks different than what, you know, the average person's life is, and you're cool with that, hallelujah, amen, right? Like, there is no shame. Amber.
Can I get a comment in here?
Yes.
about the generational trauma? Because I was really struck by what Khadijah was saying about the generational traumas coming from a group of people in this American society that has dealt with this legacy of slavery, which is to say that, okay, we weren't allowed to have money for like hundreds of years. So of course we're going to be, you know, behind the bar financially. That's, you know, and you can crunch numbers around that and it gets crazy. But it impacts so many other things. Like when Khadijah was talking about the reading, I was like, oh yeah, I hear you, sister. Because I see myself as someone who is dead on America's color line. I'm African-American, but I'm very light skinned. I can go into lightweight white spaces and be comfortable. The whiter those spaces get, the more uncomfortable it gets for me, though I went to a prep school with the wealthy WASP. That can get really uncomfortable, okay? So I grew up in inner city Cleveland, Ohio, on a big Tyler Perry type style family. So I can be in lightweight black spaces, but the deeper and the more hood and the more ghetto, those spaces become the less comfortable I become. So I can cross those lines, but only within such a bandwidth. So now I'm an attorney, and I like to defend underdogs, and underdogs come in all kinds of shapes and colors. You know, Sean is an underdog. I'm like, I feel you. I got a brother who you told his story, and I love that. I dig that about you, Sean. And so, you know, I'm fighting for underdogs everywhere. But when I have my black underdogs and we're fighting the fight on the basis of race, it's legal. They have to read. Black people don't like to read. A lot of Black people do not like to read. And when I was growing up as a little girl in the hood, I was looked at as a sort of freak of nature because I would read, and I would read these huge long books, and that was my escape. That was my drug. It was real. And I'm like, oh, I gotta pretend like I don't see this right here. That was, you know, and it didn't occur to me. I had no understanding that, you know, all of my African-American peers around me, that wasn't a way that they could escape because it had been denied to them for centuries. It's illegal for slaves to have money. It's illegal for slaves to read. It was illegal for slaves to even congregate and speak to one another in more like a group of like 4, you're in trouble. It's illegal. You can't do it. So there's so much that have put African-Americans behind the curve, as Tamara was saying. And that's all over the world. You know, if you look all over the world, I have a saying that is, the world is a plantation and Americans are the house Negroes, except for African Americans. We still in the field, even in the global plantation, we still in the field. So it is a worldwide human problem that some people have just been kept behind the curve. And I think it's just tragic for humanity in general because there's just so much potential in all of us, so much light in all of us. But
yeah. It's so, I think even if you haven't seen the movie Sorry to Bother You, it's a really old movie. It's like, it kind of talks about different cultures, how we like, we're separated, but really it's really like everybody's under it. Right? Like we have a role, but everybody's under it because we all have our, this is what we got to do. This is what our family says. This is whatever. I was hesitant to even put anything in this book about money because it was like, well, it's really not a book about money. But I tell you, most people contact me when they read that debt and emotional debt chapter and they're like, oh, that was me. Oh, I'm in debt. Oh, no one knows. You know what I'm saying? No one knows my number. And because I tell people how much debt, you know, how much I had to get up under to even be able to live what I had to do to just a simple little home. Like it, but because I really honestly, it was like no one told me. My mother didn't drive a car till she was 40 something. I didn't, you know what I mean? So it's like I didn't understand. Like my son just bought a car and I was like, he just saved up money and bought one. I was like, you know, when I bought a car, we just went to the dealership. She said, sign these papers and I owed $20,000 per car at 18. Stuff like that no one tells you, like, don't sign papers to, maybe an 18-year-old doesn't need a $20,000 car. But I drove it right off, went to DC, partied all weekend, came to New York. No one ever tells you the parties cost a lot of money. But I went to all the good parties, but I said, that's why I was like, when I was so excited for him because that was like trauma breaking. He doesn't have a debt. He's 18, doesn't have to think about what am I going to do if I got to work this many hours, because he can literally enjoy his life. He can go to theater school. He can be whatever he wants without, and unlike me who had to be like, but I got to pay the bills. But who's else going to pay the bills?
Right.
It's a whole different life.
I have a question. May I ask a question?
Of course.
When you originally asked the question, Erin, around seeking solidarity and the choices we make, I raised my hand exactly when Tamara did, and I thought to myself, put your hand down. Because, yeah, I'll be straight with you, all right? I thought, you're a white dude. Put your fucking hand down. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I hear Khadijah's, what she shared about her book, but what everyone shared, I wonder, and here's a question for you. Let's say you didn't meet me tonight. You didn't hear a story. You didn't see me drinking my cheap bourbon. But it's good. And there's this guy, you don't know anything about his life, but here's what you know about him on paper, right? His parents paid for a 4-year school. Good school. He does pretty well, right? never has to work a goddamn day while he's in college. He's got all the financial education he wants. If he wants to take it, it's there. It's an option. It's on the radar. Maybe he doesn't take it, right? When he's done with college, he takes his bar mitzvah money that he got 8, 9 years before that, and he goes to Europe and gallivants. It's a great word. He gallivants around, fucking around for a month. And when he comes back, he moves to Atlanta. Now, you know where the story's probably going, but time and time again, he gets bailed out. His parents have money. Their parents had money. And yet, somehow, when he's north of 40, his life is a fucking disaster. Right? He has no savings. He's still in debt. Somehow. Like, right? Let us not even discuss the fractured or compromised relationships, because we're focusing more on this particular thing around money. And he's having trouble with getting by just paying rent, which makes absolutely no sense. He's a smart dude. You love the third person thing I'm doing here? Is that working? Just wondering.
We all know who you're talking
I know,
about,
I know.
but please, by all means, continue.
So I'll finish this up because, this is a little rant. I could go on for a long time. But a guy like me, right? White, middle class, even upper middle class by upbringing, not by my life now. Able-bodied, straight, and that only matters because it's less marginalized if it's not marginalized at all. Mm-hmm. Right? On paper, there's absolutely no reason why I shouldn't have absolutely crushed it in every measurable way. So here's my question. What do you do with someone like me who had everything? Now, I could say, well, no, you didn't actually know the Joneses. They had it way more, but that's
right.
I had everything.
We all know the Joneses.
Yeah. There's always more. Yeah. But by almost anyone's account, like so much more than you needed. Now, can you truly, I'm wondering, have or create space for that person or for this person?
I guess what I'm thinking is what I tell everybody in therapy and friendships, and I tell myself, if everyone in life lived by facts, we would all be rich, then, and sane. But we don't. Like, facts don't matter. How you feel is really what matters, because I can tell you, and I write in the book, well, shoot, we already know if you save 10%, by the time you're 20 to 50, you'll have $1 million.
I know.
Like, we already know that, but what makes people not do that? And not even what makes people, like, what makes 80% of the people not do that one thing? When we've been knowing this for 20, we had Susie Orman, like, what more you want? Like, we had, how many people do we need to keep having to say the same thing? And that's all I'm saying. That's when I realized it was something called money trauma. And it literally impacts people who make $1 million. And I've met people who make $10 an hour having the same, they can't get over that story they say in their mind. Like, I had a friend who wanted to start a business, didn't know what business she wanted to start. But she said she like paid for this $20,000 coaching course. And she was like, yeah, I'm going to start this business. 9 months into it, she's like, yeah, I just did that because I didn't want them to know I didn't have any money. Why would you do something like that? Why not just start with a $2,000 course? Just get started. Because money is not factual in our hearts and minds. It is literally all emotional. We make all our money, what we buy, what we like, it's all an emotional decision. People buy my book because they probably, they're like, oh, that's interesting. But most people will be like, well, you seem like a nice person.
True.
I read one page.
Right.
You seem interesting. I'll buy it. I'm curious. about you. Is it a good book? Who knows? But I mean, maybe it is. But I'm just saying, if we could just like, that's what I love about like Eckhart Tolle and like, right, like the story that we tell ourselves, right, is we don't tell ourselves the truth.
No.
We tell each other, like, we tell ourselves how we feel. We don't tell like, hey, do we really need that? No, we're like, but I really feel like I need it. But I really feel like, so I don't think like as far as culture is that much different, because it just depends on the culture. You tell yourself different things. I got a lot, I can waste it. I don't have a lot, I need to keep it. I need to hoard it. Just depends.
Sure.
So that was a really beautiful interaction, and I really appreciate that. It is, you know, the story that we tell ourselves about who we are, and what we deserve and what we can do and what we should do. And, you know, that's the crux of everything. And so much of what your book is, Khadijah, is about changing the story, right? Is about, you know, showing up every day. You know, I teach this class called Restory, and, you know, the process is about, you know, showing up and changing the story. Like, how do you change the idea of who you are? And it's interesting because your book ends with a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, which I'm going to read. It says, Thich Nhat Hanh says, without suffering, you have no ways to learn to be understanding and compassionate. The gift of compassion is tremendous. So as we close out our evening, what I will say is that compassion for others is incredibly important. True compassion for other people cannot be gained until we develop compassion for ourselves. Cannot be gained until we learn to accept the reality of our own humanity, right? That not one of us knows what the hell we're doing. Not one of us was born with an instruction manual, as fabulous as this book is. Not one of us was born with instructions. And so we figure it out as we go. And it's harder to be human when you are constantly beating yourself up. It's harder to get past the roadblocks when you're constantly saying, fuck me, why am I like this? Why couldn't I be different? Why couldn't I be born into this family or that skin or that environment or that country or, you know, whatever it is? Like, we are what we are. And that's why I love your message so much. The radical empathic acceptance is that, you know, like, look, this is what it is. I don't get to choose to have been a different person. And hopefully you wouldn't do that anyway, but here I am, and I must make the most of the bullshit that I, you know, am swimming around in every day. And so, you know, I think it's really the perfect way for us to have come together in this. It's really interesting. I didn't expect this to sort of turn into a community, thank you, Sean, to turn into a conversation around money. But it has so much to do with our sense of identity and our worth, and the story we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're worthy of. And so I just want to thank you all so much. We've gone over time. I'm actually just chopping the rest of the evening because I've kept you all longer than I had planned to. But any last words? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, it was nice time, nice chat, interesting.
And if anybody wants to stay and keep hanging out, please do so. I just, you know, for the sake of time, I want people to feel like they're not being held hostage. Much love. Thank you all to everyone who has joined us this evening. Bravo.
Thank you, everyone.
Yay.
Good night, everyone.
Great Zoom time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Danny, didn't you have a story?
Yeah. What's that?
Do you have a story?
Um,
And Bob?
yeah, I have lots of stories. I didn't have one to tell.
Okay.
One
No
I was going
pressure.
to talk about.
Yeah.
One I was going to talk about was about my family, and I'm like you. I enjoy an enormous amount of white privilege. I look like the average white dude, but I've only been 2 generations passing as white. So my family is Native American from Georgia, and
Wow.
not to equivocate anything, you know, with a black experience, but they got treated pretty badly, and there was a lot of stuff around money in my family, and a lot. I was always in survival mode. I was the weird kid in my family that liked to read, and I never got asked what I was reading or about going to college. You know, my parents were like, oh, you should go to computer school. You should go to trade school. It was never like, go to university and get an education. It was none of that. And there was a lot of stuff around money in my family. And just, it's really interesting what I've learned about my family and how, you know, my paternal grandfather was half Native. My dad was half Native, and we all look like white dudes, you know, so we enjoy an enormous amount of privilege, but in their environment where they grew up, everyone knew. There was no hiding just because you looked white. There was no hiding that you were just part of that half-breed family down the street, you know, so they all had to have jobs that they could depend on themselves. My grandfather's birth certificate said that he was a farmer, but he was the kind of farmer that didn't raise a crop and sell it. He was the kind of farmer that fed his family, and he made wine and sold it to the colored people. And I found out later that he did more than just wine. He was a really good whiskey maker, and he was legendary in that area. And he was a crazy old man. And my cousins would tell me they'd be really careful going around his house because they'd knock on his door and he'd shoot before he would say anything else. He would just shoot at people. And this is the kind of like chaos that my family came through, and I never realized it, and you know, I never realized the trauma that had gotten passed down and into me. And then when I started having issues with mental illness in my 20s and 30s and stuff, like this stuff makes sense now. And I really love, Khadijah, your comment about being a trauma breaker, because I'm a trauma breaker too, and it's like it's happening. And like you, Sean, on paper, I should be a millionaire, man. I should be knocking it out of the park. But, you know,
life happens.
It is the way it is. I choose to be happy today instead of like downing myself for where I could be or what I ought to be. And I really like, Erin, you talked about, you know, living your life and the imposter syndrome. I used to have that really bad. Then I just stopped trying so hard to do things to make other people happy. You know, when I started learning how just to do what I needed to do and make me happy, it was a lot better.
Yeah.
Where do you live, Danny?
I live in Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, I think, sorry.
That's dope.
Thank you,
What's going
Danny.
on in Richmond?
You always just you're just like a heart. You're just like a human, just heart. And just there's just goodness that comes from you. And so yeah, the next time we do this, you will have you know the stage when you're ready, because your stories are always wonderful.
Yeah, that was a wonderful story.
Nice.
Bob, did you want to share? We're recording and this is going to go on my podcast. So even if the audience isn't still here, you'll get an audience.
Ooh.
Oh, well, I actually have lots of stories that would fit into this.
Wow, Bob, thanks, Erin. Can I talk to you one day about podcasting, just as an aside?
Sure.
Okay.
Just as an aside.
So many questions. So many questions. Now I'm hustling. I'm working it out. But like, you know, once in a while you need to chat about it. Like,
of course. Yeah. I mean, I'm no expert, but I managed to do it for a year.
I saw that. I know.
Totally by myself. And then I joined the network, and I really love.
I emailed them.
Oh, you did? Good.
I just realized like 2 weeks ago they emailed back, and I haven't gotten back to them. Great.
They're awesome. All right, Bob, did you decide?
Yeah, I actually do have a story that I haven't told in a while.
Okay.
And
nice.
So I'm going to read it. but it fits into what we're talking about from a different angle. And it happens that a storyteller from Chicago named Maria Morris
Oh yeah.
asked me for a copy of it
Oh
for
really?
some reason that I don't know why. And I didn't have anything recorded. So when you said you're going to record this, I'll just give her the link.
Awesome.
Nice.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, go for it.
Maria's gonna be at our 99-second slam, Bob. So just you
I
can-
probably won't see her until tomorrow morning. It would surprise me a lot if she wasn't at the Cocoon.
She'll be there.
My father is a wealthy man. He gives a lot to charity. By any standards, he does a lot of good deeds. His children hate him. We're used to my father giving directives where he uses money to reward or incentivize us. He paid for some of my education and then stopped because he got mad at me for something. He gave financial nudges to each of us to get us in line. I hate it, but never had enough money to call my own shots. In 1980, he summons us to his office. All 4 children show up along with 3 spouses. I'm the only unmarried one, and I'm 33 at the time. He has written a new will, which he says will be a permanent change. He's 65 years old at the time, in relatively good health, and he has millions of dollars of assets. My father tells us how much he values marriage. We kids remember my parents coming close to divorcing several times, but now she's dead for 3 years from cancer, and my father only seems to remember the good times. He says that upon his death, all surviving children and spouses will receive equal shares. I do not feel love or gratitude for him. I go through the math. At the time, the amount we would share was around $10 million. If unmarried, I'd receive 1.4 million. A life-changing amount for me, to be sure. But if married, my wife and I together would get 2.5 million, some 75% more. It becomes clear to me that I can't afford to be single. My feelings for my father are that I hope he stays alive until I get married, and then as far as I'm concerned, he can die as soon afterwards as possible. Over the next decade, I married for my father's money 3 times, and everyone ends in divorce. While each of these women had a lot going for them, I made quicker decisions than appropriate because being married was worth big money. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. My marriage foible becomes the butt of many jokes. Every time I've tied the knot, my intention is forever and ever, amen. My life has become a country western song. While this is going on, my professional dream is to move to Las Vegas and beat the casinos big time. A primary requirement to do this is a bankroll. You may not have thought of this before, but divorcing 3 times in a decade is a lousy way to build the bankroll. I moved to Las Vegas in 1993. My professional dream is going well, but my dad has some health scares, and I'm desperate to be married. 95, I meet Shirley, with whom I eventually tied the knot. The first few years are very difficult, as they always are for me and the ladies who want to be with me. But we stick it out. And professionally, I become successful, very successful. I'm the world's top writer and teacher in my field. In 2005, my father calls us all together again for an update to his will. I don't want to hear about any will change. The one he made 25 years ago jerked me around like a puppet. But he removes the marriage provision in his will. Henceforth, our share of the estate will be increased by the number of times we visit him. I'm furious. I struggled to find success under the old rules, but now that I've done it, he changes the rules. I tell him he broke his promise to us. If he makes major changes to his will now, I'll choose to be out of his life for as long as he lives. I don't need his money anymore, and I've had it up to here. He's now 90 years old and doesn't consider his previous will to be a promise. He says it's his money and he can do what he wants. Shirley begs me to reconsider. Yeah, honey, we have enough to survive, but you know, an extra 5 million or so wouldn't be terrible. We can do this. I stick to my guns. When my father dies in 2012, I get $10,000 from the will, as do my two brothers, who've also had enough of his treating us like puppets. My sister remains respectful and attentive until the end. She gets a lot more. I'm not proud of staying away from my father during his last years, but I'm not ashamed of it either. He became a monster, and the appropriate thing to do with a monster is to stay out of the way. I can blame my father and his stupid will all I want, but I was the one who kept saying I do. I'm the one who ladies found easy to hook up with, but difficult to remain with. I'm the one who turned my life into a country western song. Thank you.
Wow.
Boom. Bob Dancer.
Whoa.
Absolutely. Wow. First of all, there's a section in Khadijah's book where she says basically the exact same words that you that you just said at the end of that about, you know, you blame other people until you decide, well, what am I doing? What did I do? How have I done differently? So, or could have done differently. So it just like brought it out. Bob, that was amazing. Not surprising in the lead. But thank you. Thank you for sticking around and sharing that with us. These events always end up exactly as they're supposed to and never as I expect them to, which is the way that I like it. So I so appreciate all of you, old friends and new, for sharing your evening with me and with the If You Could See Me project and our audience, of which there are still a few people on Facebook Live. Thank you to everyone on Facebook Live who has stuck with us for all of this time. Thank you to everyone who shared a story. Y'all don't have to stick around. I'm going to sing my last song because it makes me happy. So.
Go ahead.
Yay.
I wasn't gonna, but then I thought, you know what? What the hell? Thank you, Sean.
You do you, yeah.
What?
No, I mean, you want to sing, you sing. I might even belly dance, but I would get the hell off this if I were you before I do that.
Please, by all means.
Can you belly dance?
You
Can
do
you stop
you,
your video?
Sean.
I belly dance.
Can you
Stay where
belly
you're
dance
at.
while I'm singing What a
You don't
Wonderful
want
World,
that.
please?
Really don't want that.
Dude,
Yes.
I'm serious. Like, you can't.
I do a thing that I think a very small percentage of the population can do. It's not technically belly dancing. It's not weird. Don't worry. It is something with my belly, but I've only met like maybe a few dozen people that can do it. So
That
I'll
thing.
do it. You know, you've seen that?
That thing. The wave thing.
I do the wave.
I cannot do that. But
Most people can do it. It's not a good thing to a song, though. It's trust me, it's not a great.
well, I'm just here to say that I am doing this as you know, like, this is my joy, but y'all do whatever you are called to do. If you would like to sing along, if you would like to do your belly dancing or whatever, please, by all means. I am just, Danny, I'm taking a page from your book and I'm doing something that makes me happy. Right. And, you know, that's not easy. Was that very loud?
No, it's good.
great.
I see trees of green and red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright, blessed day and the warm, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll know much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yeah, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Erin.
Yes.
Yay, Erin.
Oh, thank you. I thought you said, hey, Erin.
No backup there, folks. No backup. That was pure.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I want to live in a world where we don't ever get so cynical that we can't end a show with the schmaltziest song in the entire world. Thank you all so much. This was so lovely. I'm so excited to do this again. And yeah, the world is weird. Everybody stay you, stay good, stay together, and call me if you need me.
And